Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm glad everybody is networking because that's the exact reason we're getting together. And I'm hopeful that there was enough to eat and drink. But I'm about to get this thing started. It's almost 5 minutes to 6, so normally it's nice to see many familiar faces, and then it's nice to see some new faces. And I think everybody's kind of got used to us kicking off around 6:05, but we have a great speaker today, and I wanted to take the time to make sure that he has enough time and everybody has a chance to ask questions. So, I'm Umesh Verma, I'm CEO of Blue Lens, and I'm the founder of Cyber Houston. And so, this happy hour is set up so that we can all get together in a relaxed and comfortable setting and build a trusted network of business leaders. Our goal is to ensure that business leaders in the Greater Houston region are educated and prepared to conduct day-to-day cyber activities in a safe and secure manner. And you know what, I am getting older. I used to be able to read that cheap panel over there, but I'm not able to very well, so I'm going to have to keep looking over my shoulder. But that's probably why I'm doing that. Anyway, as I said, this happy hour is to develop a trusted network of business leaders and provide high-quality information and learnings in partnership with special groups and organizations such as ISACA, IntraGuard, ISA, SIM, HIMSS, and other. And events, proud moment here. Brag moment. We have just recently been recognized by DHS as the first ISAL in Houston. And ISAL is an information sharing and analysis organization. And if you want more information, go to the isal.org website. There's a standards organization. We are a geographically based ISAL, and one of the main reasons we are given this designation, or this designation was bestowed upon us, is because we are different from what others do. We are all about building and convening leaders and arming business leaders with the information they need for governance and oversight and policy and risk and reputation, talking about all those big issues. And it's all about the business of cybersecurity. We do get into the bits and bytes, but we try to keep it up at a management and business level. Follow us on Twitter. The happy hours, for those of you that used to come regularly, we took a break for the last, I think, almost a year. Prior to that, we were doing happy hours every second Thursday of every month. We're putting that back on the schedule. It's from 5 to 7 p.m. and it's over here at the Houston Exponential NPR. NPR is the multi-purpose room. That's what this room is called. And so, before I do that, no, it's okay. Let's keep going. At the end of the event, we try to end around, get about 10 minutes to 7. We will be getting to raffles. We have a couple of raffles, always a little bit of fun. Some simple raffles for everybody to have, and 2 winners will walk away, or 3 winners will walk away with some exciting prizes. All right, this I have to do from a compliance perspective of the facilities, and because we're here in Midtown, please do consume all food and beverages while inside this room and maybe out here, but please do not take it out of the facilities and onto the street, because we have a lot of people who, I don't know politically what's the right way to say it, but it is what it is, so we have to be careful. So thank you for your consideration. Okay, events like this would not be performed or delivered without our sponsors, ISACA, Reneka App Builders, and Blue Lens. ISACA and Cyber Houston have formed a very, very special relationship. And SIM is involved in there, right, George? We'll talk about that, I guess, in a little bit. But ISACA has stepped up. This is ISACA, the Greater Houston chapter, and Harvey and I have known each other for over a decade, and he's the president of the ISACA group here in Houston. And so what we have done is we partnered for the Houston Cyber Summit that was held in February, and ISACA put on several panels as well and brought a bunch of their members to the event. And then what we have worked out is this partnership to bring on these happy hours every month again. So thank you to ISACA, and you will see, we're probably going to see a different caliber of speaker. We already have very good speakers, but we're going to be really talking more from adding a privacy lens to everything we're talking about. We're adding a compliance lens to what we're talking about, and also an assurance and audit lens. So getting more targeted to the governance and oversight piece. Also, our community partners, our Houston Exponential, the people that have operate this building. It's a Midtown Redevelopment Authority project, as well as the Greater Houston Partnership. And with the Greater Houston Partnership, for those of you who were involved, like David, thank you, good to see you after a long time, David, but he was one of the founding members, David LaPlante, when he was CIO of the city, when he was CISO of the city of Houston. And so we formed, the Greater Houston Partnership incubated the Greater Houston Cybersecurity Task Force. And then soon, because of all the great participation by great leaders like David, we kind of outgrew the ability of the partnership to support us. And so they encouraged us to take it out and form Cyber Houston. So that's how the Cyber Houston was formed. And the Greater Houston Partnership still stays very involved with what we're doing and supports all the efforts of the Greater Houston Cybersecurity Council. And then the Center for Houston's Future looks ahead, and so they continue to support us on forward-looking initiatives. What used to be the Cybersecurity Task Force has been reformed into the Greater Houston Cybersecurity Council, and as you can see, we have representation across the board from many of our great community corporations around the area, and it keeps growing. We have, as a council to date, we have put out some materials and guidance. These resources are available on the website at cyberhouston.org in electronic form, and they're also available in paper form, but we're kind of sunsetting the paper form. It's Cybersecurity for the Board of Directors. It's some guidance, about a dozen points that Board of Directors should focus in on. And then a cybersecurity preparedness assessment for companies of all sizes. It's a 68.11 category assessment for business leaders to sit down with their IT and security staff and get a good picture on how prepared and resilient their organizations are. We have just recently taken the paper version of the cybersecurity assessment and put it online at assess.cyberhouston.org. But if you go to the cyberhouston.org website, you cannot miss the big Assess Now button right in the front of the page. And this is available free of charge to our entire community. The ISAL Standards Organization is also very interested in taking our work and making it available to all the ISALs across the country. So that's another great feather in not only our cap, but on everybody that collaborates and helps us with it. So I wanted to take a moment and talk a little bit about the Houston Cyber Summit. We took a break for about a year from these happy hours because we were asked to build a platform for the work that we're doing in the Greater Houston region and to bring leaders together. The city of Houston, Harris County, and other entities around town, including the Greater Houston Partnership, the HIMSS and ISACA, SIM, and others, got together with the council and said, let's build a platform to bring leaders, business leaders, especially mid-tier leaders, and take the learnings from the enterprise leaders, distill that down into sensible, economical recommendations, and deliver that information into the community with the lens of making our whole cyber aware. Idea is to be resilient. So the focus is now on resilience. Get used to the idea of getting attacked and breached. It's going to happen. So what do we talk about? We talk about how do you thrive in this era. That's a CEO or business leader type conversation. So we're talking about how do you thrive in this era of cybersecurity and of breaches. So let me show you a little bit about what happened. Those of you that were not able to join, Shankar, I'm missing your mouse. Maybe it only reacts to your fingers. Extremely proud of that because we sold out at over 425 registrants that day. And as you can see, HPU was a great investor in support of the city, the county. We had over 60 speakers all day long and on panels. We had people from generals and four-star generals all the way, politicians. Thanks to John Zatko. John Zatko, VP of America Cybersecurity at Tech Mahindra, stepped up and created a scholarship program with the Houston Cyber Summit. And we were able to give $1,000 scholarships to 7 area students who excelled in cybersecurity from Houston ISD, Lone Star, HCC, U of H Downtown, U of H College of Technology, HBU, and also a nonprofit that focuses on helping young adults with disabilities become workforce ready. And IT is a big part of it, and we've had an opportunity to work closely with them. So we were very, very happy to do all of this, and it couldn't have been done without many members in this room and for all of you from your regularly. Today we have one other great thing that we're doing new in our effort to continue to innovate. We have a partnership with Houston Community College and with IGI. So, Ravi, tell us what we're doing real quick.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Ravi Brother. I'm the Director for Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Houston Community College. My role is at district level, and most of you know of HCC as like the third largest community college in the country. But then we also have a thriving cybersecurity program that's nationally recognized. So we love our work with Cyber Houston, and today my role is to hold live stream this event on facebook.com/cyberhouston, and then also on YouTube. Cyber Houston will eventually have its own thriving YouTube channel that will have live streams. It's always had great content, but it was post-production. This is live stream, so this is happening now. So if you need to let your grandkids or your wives or husbands know that you're really out here, let them know by telling them to go to facebook.com/cyberhouston. And then, of course, Iggy. So we could not do this without the live producer and editor. So Iggy is managing all this through his entity called Pathos Grin, a veteran, quite amazing story, and a good friend, and he is ever so supportive of doing these events for nonprofits. So reach out to him for your own initiatives or projects. Thank you.
Thank you for all your support. Give them a Okay, and so now I'd like to bring up Harvey. Harvey, you.
So as I'm walking up here, who's the first one that can tell me what my tie represented today? Not you.
Well, before we do that, Harvey is ISACA's Houston chapter president. And, he and I, like I mentioned, have gone back over a decade. But he is such a hard man to get hold of. And his voicemail box is always full. And then his voicemail asks you, do you want to leave, would you like to send him a text message notification? And I say yes, and I push this pound sign. And then the voicemail comes back and tells me, you may hang up now. So, anyway, this is how we communicate. We communicate at like 11, 12, 1, 2 in the morning. We communicate at 4, 5 in the morning. But it has been an absolute pleasure to work with you and for all the support that you have provided. And so, Harvey's going to say a couple of comments and then introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Can I call you Bob? You can. Okay, all right. So, who has the answer to my question? And what is it?
Motherboard.
Excellent. So you get a ticket to our June 21st conference, whether you want it or not.
Yes.
And then we'll be rattling one off later. So we're also having let me just talk briefly about that, June 21st conference. I think it's the first one in 6 months that I haven't had Eugene speak at, but it's going to be good anyway. So we're going to have several cybersecurity audit topics. We're also going to be blessed with the presence of John Hoffmeister, former president of Shell, to talk with us about leadership. But I am so happy to be really kicking this off and doing things with Umesh. We're going to do more things, I hope and think, regarding documents, regarding other things. For example, we're going to be doing things to Eugene. We're going to be doing a paper on blockchain through the ISACA audit chapter, and we'd like to have some of you involved in that as well. So, true to what Umesh has said, where's George? Wanted George to say a few words. Are you going to stand up and do your 360, George?
Yeah, I think I can carry. I don't need.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm George Crawford. I'm president of a group called SIM. Much to my chagrin, it's one of the best kept secrets in Houston. SIM is a nationwide organization, about 5,000 members. We have 250 in Houston, primarily CIOs, VPs of IT. Our whole premise is networking, but also giving back to the community. We've given away $500,000 in the last 3 years to STEM-based organizations. And we also have lots of opportunities for volunteering at the different universities that we partner with. Also to be able to be mentors for the students. So it's a great opportunity for us to be able to put forth opportunities for our membership. And we get to partner with wonderful people like Umesh and Harvey in these different events and different opportunities around. So I look forward to the 21st, Harvey.
Fantastic. Wonderful. They've got a great golf tournament as well. So Eugene, I'm going to introduce Eugene in just a minute. He said I'll typically do my 37 seconds of introduction, which is about right, because people ask me how I get good speakers on good topics, and I say, well, I just get good speakers who are constantly solving problems and speaking about them, and therefore I'm going to let Eugene talk about this more. But we've been very blessed with his help in our chapter. So, Eugene, come on.
Can you guys hear me out there? I don't like podiums. God hasn't worked hard enough to make me taller. First, thanks for having me here. I'm your entertainment for tonight. I try to make this interactive enough and kind of give a little bit of background. It started as me trying to get a hold of Harvey through the same mechanism of text messages and voicemails for a duration of about 4 months, because I thought that the blockchain is getting a bad name and everybody wants to know what it is and how to use it, but everybody thinks it's all Bitcoin. And as confusing as it sounds right now, that's what everybody's level of folks we interact with typically was. So I was hoping to share that. I was an ISACA member, I was former CIO for many years, and I said maybe I could try to give back to the community and have ISACA folks look at the presentation. Long story short, ever since the first presentation, I've been on the road show for Houston Secure conferences, and every one of them is getting better and better. So this is a condensed version of 30 minutes or less, and there are 3 topics I'm going to cover, and based on the show of hands, I can skip a few. How many of you are already working with blockchain, so know what it is? Raise your hand. Okay, so we're going to go quicker on that part. And then I like to give real use cases of how we use blockchain, because it gives it a little more of a kind of a wrapper. It makes it cooler. It makes it more distinct from just speculating cryptocurrency, right? So that's how I'm going to go. And then somebody says, well, who are you to tell us about that? And I've been in IT for 20 years, so hence the gray hair. I started on the hardware side, and I moved out to the CIO role, spent 7 years here in Houston as a CIO of Transwestern. Throwing a towel, decided to do another startup. We've been experimenting with blockchain for the last 4 years. We actively use blockchain at TopJets. And just to give you a short, I don't like to talk long about what the company does, but think of the 2 ways to look at us. We're the Uber of private jets, right? So you can download an app, hit the button, and not only get a jet, but also get an Uber to take you to your jet all in one shot, right? And it won't cancel on you, I promise. And then the second part of what we do is, the way to explain what we do, we cater to the 2% of the 2%, right? Only 2% of the riches actually fly private jets. So, not to jump into a blockchain, but you understand the security requirements I live with, right? Because if that customer list gets out, right, that's not a good night of sleep. So you have all sorts of interesting scenarios. So we talk cybersecurity after this, or how many invasions a day we divert. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. We're going to try to stick to a blockchain. I believe I can still read the outer monitor. So essentially, this is an evolution, right? Every operating system, everything that happens on the internet follows some kind of evolution. And the blockchain, which is essentially a debit credit ledger, right? Because you're going to hear a lot of, I'm an old school, so I'm going to try to come up with old terminology that works with the blockchain. But essentially, it's a ledger that's available publicly, and if you don't put any identity information, it's cool to share. And we're living in an oversharing society, right? So it's an interesting concept to think about. Why am I talking about this? This is the chart of every industry in the United States. And if you see the gray, that means they're already in production. So there hasn't been an industry yet that has not had some kind of blockchain something in production. Even Walmart has it in production. And if Walmart has it in production, it means everybody else should, right? So the most conservative, the automotive guys, in my opinion, but they're playing with it. And I'll give you a cool example to kind of explain what the blockchain means. How many people from oil or oil field business in here? Right, so you all know dripping pipe, right, into the ground, right, drilling. And once that pipe cracks, there's some liability, right? Who made that pipe, and how far it is in the well, right? And how many pipes you have to pull out, right? Now imagine if you had a supply chain management system where every step of that, from manufacturer all the way to the oil field, all the way into the ground, was tracked. And all the participant of supply chain can instantly look it up, and the poor guy in the insurance company is, oh God, this is this guy again, and had to send the check, right? Well, that's the easiest, right, implementation of blockchain, where the pipe has no identity. It's a piece of metal with a unique number, and as long as you can separate the identities from the RFID labels on the pipe, it's kind of a cool use of blockchain, right? My favorite is cigar one, but I'm trying to be politically correct, so we can talk Walmart lettuce or Cuban cigars. Which one are we going to talk about? Cigars. Okay, that's a good one. I did not know this before we jump into blockchain, that if the cigar is exposed to certain temperature or humidity, it loses its value. I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. I don't smoke cigars. But I did not know the cigar could cost $6,000. All right, and I'm like, ooh, that's money, right? How can we use blockchain for that? So just think about it. A poor, what's the politically correct word? I had two minds, so forgive me. A poor person out there is rolling cigars, right, and happens to roll a little RFID sticker on it, right? Plausible? Plausible, right? As it gets put in the box, that sticker is logged on the blockchain, in the ledger, right? Then it gets to some dealer's humidifier. And that humidifier has a little Wi-Fi temperature and humidity meter. Plausible? Plausible. It could have RFID reader. Plausible? It reads the information and ensures that all the 300 days before somebody went out and spent $6,000 on the cigar, right, it was in a certain temperature. Now, if temperature goes up, it records it to blockchain, and unbeknown to poor dealer who had his electricity cut off for a day, all of a sudden that batch is voided, right? So you, the consumer, now can walk in with a cell phone that has NFC or whatever the newest, greatest way of scanning things is, and take that cigar and wave the wand, and it's going to tell you from the factory to here it never exceeded whatever humidity. Is that a cool use of blockchain? Now, why blockchain? Why not use a SQL database or whatever it is? Because it goes back to the old days. My first project was in San Diego, California, and the courts wanted to preserve records so they can be altered. And they wrote them on platters, right? Because the platters is write once, read forever, and they were not magnetic, so they couldn't be destroyed, right? And that was really blockchain, if you think about it, is you write once, you can't rewrite it, you have to amend it. So the second quality of blockchain, right, is not that it's distributed, it's also write once and it's forever there, right? So that's kind of fundamentals in there. So that's what we're going to talk about, maybe in a little detail. George gave me some feedback from a previous session that we shouldn't dive deep because we'll lose the audience. So I'm going to try to stay afloat here. Now I'm kind of going to skip through a scenario. But here's the best way, I think, is maybe in here, to describe a blockchain for people who are not familiar with it. Imagine you had a Rolex watch. Notice I'm in the jet business, I talk high-value items. You had a Rolex watch, and you put it in a box, and you close the box with 2 keys. And you take this one key and you put it in the next box when you're going to put your Patek watch in. And you're going to take the key and put it with it and use another 2 keys to close the box and you continue on. Make sense? So in order to open the first box, how many boxes do you have to open? All the boxes that are subsequent to it. That means it'll take you longer to do that. That's a deterrence. Make sense? Yes. All right. So let's put it in the practical use of blockchain. Blockchain consists of some data that is stored in the block. That block gets encrypted and the key gets put to the next box. And so on, and so on, and so on. Make sense? So that would be easy if you have quantum computing powers or teraflop GPUs to decode a lot of boxes real quick, correct? Using standard 256 hash, I believe still. So what they did is they came out with a casino trick. It's called dice. So they throw a dice and the number comes up and they hash it. And they'll hash it until all the numbers and the hashes have zeros in them. That's thousands and thousands of times. And only when it has zero, they will call it a completed block. Right? A perfect key. And then they put it in the next box and the process repeats. And that's a lot of computing power. And I'm talking about those miners with GPUs and CPUs and ASIC chips are just burning the electricity, right? And the Texas has nothing to worry about when it comes to production of oil for electricity purposes. So that system works well, except now we have another problem, which is called double spend problem. And a double spend problem, how do you ensure that whatever transaction you're writing is only one out there, or if you're spending Bitcoin, it's only one transaction out there. So what they do is they send this message out to multiple gold diggers, miners, right? And they all work on that. And when 3 of them or 4 of them, or depending on whatever confirmations you're using, come up with the same answer. Now imagine how much electricity now is worth, right? And when they come up with the same answer, they declare good luck. So what that prevents, it prevents somebody spoofing transactions into it, because it's A, randomly distributed, B, everybody has to come up with the same key, right? It's almost like having 4 locksmiths working on one lock. Right? That's another way of thinking about it. So that's what the whole nuance of a blockchain is. It's a lot of computing power used to create a chain that once verified cannot be altered. Does that make sense? It's slow. It's extremely slow. And I'll give you a comparison. Hopefully this has a laser deal. So a Bitcoin can do 7 transactions per second. Right? For those of you who know what OLTP is, going like, right? Visa can do 24,000 transactions per second, which is not a lot. Actually, when I saw it, I thought Visa can only do 24,000 per second. That's scary. Larry Ellison might be turning over there and going like, they should have bought Oracle. No, they're not running an Oracle, right? But long story short, that is the challenge of the blockchain because of how much adoption it got early on, and how much traffic is out there. It basically slows down the system. Good news. I can send you a Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever on the list instantaneously. And you're going to see it going your way. Right? But if it's a bad day on the market like yesterday, for example, it might take 7 hours to get to you before you can spend it. Right? PayPal is still instant and still runs a market. But that's in the essence of how it works. So let me talk a little bit about blockchain types, because you're going to hear word private blockchain, public blockchain, and so on and so forth. So public blockchain is where people you don't know have a copy of your data and they're computing it for you. Also known as any cloud that doesn't have a Microsoft, Amazon, or some big name behind it. Right? It's technically public. You don't know who has access to servers in Rackspace. I didn't mean to say Rackspace, but in the concept. So think of it as a public cloud. And then there's private cloud, right? There are companies like IBM, Microsoft, and others that now offer this capability, but inside of their data centers. So in case of TopJets, for example, we use Azure blockchain, and we have all the worldwide data centers available to us, right? So it's still distributed, but it's not necessarily running on Mary Jane's computer on the balcony in Russia, right? Because you can Google pictures, right? The miner on the balcony, do that. You'll see some cool stuff. You will even see Mary Jane who runs it. Don't do it after midnight. There is permission or permissionless options to it, right? So we talk smart contracts in a second. Some blockchain require you to have some kind of a permission to access it, right? And there's permissionless, like Bitcoin, everybody can look at the blockchain. So that's the concept of that, and we're going to talk about that. Now, what do you use blockchain for? You sell craft coins to fund your projects, or also known as ICOs. You get enough people to send $1. By the way, sorry, I'm going to diverge here. How many of you have kids? I recommend that you go back 2 slides, take a picture of this quickly. For people who have kids, I'm about to make your kids a college fund pay for it. Work with me here. Took a picture? I suggest that you research the Litecoin, Dash, and Ripple because they're cheap. They're like 30 cents each right now. And here's the secret sauce. I saw a picture online, it was on Instagram, where little kids had a lemonade stand, and they say accepting Bitcoin. And they put a QR code on that picture. How much do you think they got? From internet, not from anybody who bought the real lemonade and M&Ms that they had on that picture? 292,000 in less than 3 hours. How many colleges I paid for, please send me like a steak gift card or something. But I recommend Ripple because Ripple community is much noisier. They'll viral the picture much faster. Right? And just a cool idea, but just think of what happened there, right? Because it's so easy to send using a barcode from anywhere around the world. Cute kids got themselves 300K. Right? So just sorry I diverged from that. But selling something in a securities world, in the tokens to fund the project or crowdfunding, it's one of the ways, right? Digital ID, I don't think it's going to take off because it's counterintuitive to the blockchain to have your ID on the blockchain. But log files that you can share across enterprise could be a good idea. Certification, I love that one. You're going to see it in my presentation about what we do. But how many of you have high school diploma that you can find tomorrow? Wouldn't be cool if it wasn't a blockchain, right? And you don't have to get the transcript every time you need to send something. That's a great idea, by the way. And I, as somebody, who was, if you went to college, I went to college, I will pay 1 Bitcoin to store it there forever, so I don't have to deal with ordering transcripts. As long as whatever institution I go to, right? Now, ISACA should issue CPEs on blockchain, right? So you don't have to go collect them every time, the renewal comes. But and then the smart contracts we're going to talk in a second. Now, all started with this guy, Satoshi. And here's a fun fact. Nobody knows who that is. And there's a security question coming after that. On their current value, he's about 3.5 billion. At the peak value, it was 18 billion. How many of you know encryption? What does it take to encrypt the first key? You have to have a first key, right? The root key. Who has the root key? Some guy named Nakamoto that nobody knows. We're lucky that there are 75 billion boxes after the first one, because even if you have the first key, you still have to open all the other boxes, right? But darn, that's close, right? There is a website out there that will tell you how much money you will need to open all the boxes and how much computing power you need to buy it. And there's some coins that you can crack, right? 51% and you own them all. So Google for that, that's pretty cool. What is the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum? Everybody knows? All right, how many of you know, how many of you knows VMware? Right, how many of you know Docker? Docker is a version of VMware which is open source that you can run in a small container, right? So what they did with Ethereum is they basically said, well, Bitcoin, the whole Bitcoin thing is cool, and it only carries about some coins sent from point A to point B, right? Ethereum said, wow, that's not good enough. Let's store songs, pictures, like Facebook couldn't do it, right? But let's store all this data in the blockchain. Very impractical because of the speed, but it made a good use for systems that, like we talked about, cigar tracking, lettuce tracking, or anywhere where supply chain can come together and look at the same set of data. Right? It's a very good use. So what they do is, instead of making a storage and JPEGs and PDFs or come up with a new standard, they said, we're just going to deploy a virtual machine, and you can run anything you want inside one Ethereum. And that machine will have a way to interact with it using an old school word API. By the way, the API is no good in any EDIs, because that's how limited functionality is, right? But they call it an API, and that's what it really is. It allows you to spin up that interaction with that Ethereum and store data in there with very limited EDI-like functionality. Make sense? And it'll make sense in more seconds. This is where I'm going deep, George, now. I'm going deep for you. So, let's talk about smart contracts here. Everybody talks smart contracts. I talk smart contracts. So what we decided to do 10 minutes to go, that's the sign from the back. What we decided to do is we decided to store data in about something, about a transaction, right? Who is the supplier? Who is the buyer? Who gets what commissions, what discount? Think of all the terms you can put in. The rule of smart contract, it has to be binary. It can be subjective, right? Because attorneys like subjective contracts, IT people don't like subjective contracts, so they made it very rigid, binary. Yes, no, pass, fail, right? So if you can then write an interface, and the easiest interface is escrow buying a house. A seller, a buyer, a broker, and an escrow company. Escrow company is Ethereum, smart contract. You all sign some contract when money is put in the escrow, and you say, yep, house passed the inspection. That's called Oracle, right? Coming into it. And the inspector says, yes, it passed. The title is clear. The city says title is clear, right? That's another Oracle in the contract. The money gets released. If I was an escrow person, I'll be scared. Because we don't really need them anymore, right? Everything is out of it. So I'll go quickly here. So that's essentially what the smart contract is. It's a way for you to write a web app, like an HTML page, that captures the terms that we just talked about, writes it once, and once you're written, you're done. You can't pull your money out. If you forgot to say, I can cancel my contract, that money stays on Ethereum forever. If you get shot and you forgot your keys, it stays there forever. If you don't believe me, Google the news. If you get kidnapped and you don't remember your keys, it stays there forever, right? So there's no way for you to retract that information unless you put the rule inside the contract. That's the simplest way you gotta remember. I know there's a lot of information. I'll speak a lot of stuff and I'll explain to you how we use blockchain, now that you know how it all kind of works in less than 22 minutes. These happy people are about to board this wonderful looking plane. And I don't know if I can dim the lights on the front row, that would be interesting. But you might want to look at the side monitors. And those people who just bought the ticket to fly that Jane don't understand who really owns that plane. Or when was the last time it was on maintenance, right? Camp reports, right? Or they don't know if there are any limited parts about to be overflown. For that matter, they don't know if the nav database. Remember the German plane that crashed into the mountain because they got the wrong maps? Right? They don't know what kind of training the pilot is when you're walking up to the plane. They assume that someone did their job. And assume is an interesting word in IT. After many years, I've learned that. I should have done before. Did the guy have enough sleep last night? Did he have enough duty time, right? Did he get enough rest? What is the last one? This guy can see 20/20 or less. Does he need to wear glasses? I'm kind of worried about this, right? So why is this all matter, right? I'm going to explain it to you, and there's a person in aviation that I'm really talking to right now because he's going to love this one. That's a perfectly looking plane. A beautiful plane that took off from San Francisco, California on a beautiful, I can't see anything day. That's typical in San Francisco, California. Right? And the first thing that happened, the door flew off of that plane when they got into the clouds. And the passengers go, oh my God, oh, you can Google that and see listen to the radio. It's just like, cool. And the pilot goes, hey, tell me how to get back to the airport because my door's flown off and I just got up and I wasn't planning to go back, so I don't have time to deal with it right now. And please tell me how to get back. And the controller says, well, where are you at? It was the craziest one on the radio. He goes, well, I'm in the sky, right? See, I'm trying to get back, and it's, San Francisco's got a couple of mountains around the airport. Right? Now, what really happened if you read the story, there was a switch on the door that had a history of failures, and when the pilot closed it, the light did go out. It did go out because there was an electrical failure, right? And if I were to buy this plane, I would have done a simple lookup in our system and find a consistent problem that hasn't been fixed for years. And this is the ones reported to NTSB. Would you ever get on that plane? Just think about it. Now, what happened here? We all talk about big data. We talk about AI and machine learning, right? It's all fancy words. All we did is we pulled 3 different databases into one, right? Nothing fancy. And because we don't want to pay for storage, store it on the blockchain with a tail number. Interesting one. That's not as scary as the next one. I'm going to give you the next one. Beautiful airplane, another one, right? Look at this crew. 12 years, 4,800 hours, 1,100 in this red tube. Is it a qualified pilot? By all means. Right. His first officer, according to the paperwork on the charter certificate, 2,800 hours, 235 in the same time. You guys want to see what happened? It's a 30-second video is going to make you cry. That's a parking lot. And then it was the end of those two guys. That's a very sad story, right? You're all on the same page. That's not the one you laugh at. What happened? Right? As investigations shown, the pilots shouldn't have been flying. Why? They were suspended. The driver license was suspended. He was still flying. That's a no-no, right? Multiple reckless driving violations, multiple failures of type rights, all in the history of a pilot. I, as a guy inside the tube, want to know. Maybe I'll pick a different red tube, right? And today, 1.2 million flights of charter in the United States, right, happen every day. So, why it happens? Because current systems rely on people, the 3 Ps, and we all know 3 Ps don't really work. Self-reporting doesn't work really. Ask the auditors in the room. Right? So let's think of the concept of us being in this 21st century where CPU power and memory is cheap and not having systems to correlate things because we're not willing to share. And I'm not talking giving out your social security numbers. I'm just saying correlate information that's publicly available. And this is how it looks in the real world, using a blockchain. We can pull this publicly, background hours and information, right? They submit their FAA reports. Maintenance schedules on aircrafts, that's databases that are out there that you can pull. If you want to still charter, I'm going to see your data maintenance record, right? I'm flying you, right? Talk about scheduling, insurance policies, right? That's information that could be obtained. And then training. Training facilities maintain records and submitted to FAA regularly. Technically, 92 minutes left. Technically, 90% of that data is public. Now, this data here is very public. NTSB reports, FAA, airport data, aircraft manufacturer notices, right? If something is wrong with a plane. Department of Homeland Security guys are willing to share information if there's some sabotage going on, and weather is public data. So put all of that in a system, and 30% of the flights on our board get a red tag if something is up. This is legitimate operators who are selling us flights. They have licenses from FAA, but we red flag them. And it doesn't mean we're not going to fly. We're just going to tell the customer what's going on. So now, and it's the last slide I promised within my 2 minutes, when you walk up to the plane, you pull out TopJet's app, you take the picture of the tail number, and you get an instant report. That's the power of blockchain. That's what could have prevented the red tube from slamming into the ground, and that's what could have prevented a door flying up and potentially resolved many, many other problems. I'm pleased to say we're the only company in the world against all the odds, because everybody hates us disclosing this data. You gotta understand. We're like the WikiLeaks in the industry, right? But against all the odds, I want every client who boards the plane that we book on TopJets have as much decision information available to them as humanly possible that we could have secured. And the best technology we have to do it with today is blockchain, because it's undisputable record. And that's all I have. I open it up for questions.
I'll get a mic so that we can, yeah, absolutely. This is Sam, our intern from New Jersey, so let's give him a hand. He's got he's going to help us run the mic. There you go.
That was a very interesting presentation. So I assume this is only for private jets. Is that correct?
Let's state our name, please.
Oh, okay. So my name is Deepak Kini, and I work very similar to what you guys do, but in the cybersecurity, near real time, what you call threat intelligence space. And we are like outside looking in. Question for you, this is mainly for private jets, not for the United American and Delta Airlines. Is that correct?
That is correct. Now, the airlines have much stringent processes around the particular maintenance and other issues. And their oversight is much more, they have much more resources dedicated to oversight. However, almost half of the total hours in the U.S. are flown private. And that industry has not done anything to resolve the issue for 20 years. So it's yes for private.
Yeah, so the follow-up question is, all these private jets, do they have the blockchain data? And how do you acquire that blockchain data?
So like with any IT project, you have to beg the end users to cooperate. And if they don't cooperate, you syndicate. And if you can't cooperate or syndicate, you acquire. For the reasons of how important it is, today we have to acquire. As the platform, as the operators, the people who operate the planes will realize that me having a 5-star rating is good, they're going to offer up the information. But I don't think we can sit and wait for them to offer it up. We have to collect as much as possible, just like credit bureaus, right? And then let you argue with us why your credit score is low. Right? I'm sorry, you probably, anybody from Equifax or anything right now, but think of it that way. We want to go and disrupt it and then see what comes out as opposed to the other way around.
Thank you.
And the videographer is smiling, so he must have a question too.
Thank you for your presentation. I think that's fantastic. I see you built your platform. How portable is it? Do you build it on Ethereum? Do you build it on Litecoin? And if you say you find Ethereum's transaction per second is lacking versus a Ripple versus a Litecoin versus a Dash or even EOS, how portable is your technology to port it over?
So that's a great question. We started on Ethereum, and let's just make Ethereum as a coin, right? ERC20 is the platform.
Yes.
Right? But ERC20 is the protocol. And today, ERC20 is the leading protocol for smart contracts. So when we started on ERC20 Ethereum, we run into two problems. We don't have high volume, so transaction per second wasn't an issue. What was an issue, every time we had to write something to Ethereum blockchain, we had to pay gas money, right? To those people, to Mary Jane with the miner on the balcony, right? So that got expensive really quick. And then we just said, okay, what's the way to cut costs? In an IT world, it's going from on-premises to the cloud, right? So we went to Microsoft Azure and said, hey, you got an offering for blockchain. Would you be able to do this for less? And they said, yep. Oh, by the way, it's cool, so we'll do it for free. Because we're one of those Microsoft startup approved deals, so they give us 3 years, I believe, for free. But you don't have to put everything on the public expensive chain, right? Different use cases call for different implementation, but the protocol remains the same for portability. And then as far as the layers, let's say we want to go to Litecoin tomorrow, or Lightning Protocol, right? Those are Litecoin is the coin, Lightning Protocol is Charlie's version of faster Bitcoin off-chain, right? By the way, he's a good friend of mine.
Charlie?
Yes, I'll hook you up on the Instagram if you want. But ultimately here, all we have to do is just do a data migration in an old school way of saying it is take the existing blockchain, right? Siphon it out, put it on a different backend, restore it, reinitiate the contracts. And hopefully customer will trust you in the process now that you're not going to alter data in transit, right? So you're probably going to have to fork and keep the old blockchain live for comparison reasons. Did that answer that?
Yes. Thank you.
We'll take one more question.
And the intern is here.
How often do you update the information on the airplanes that you're looking at? I mean, you've got
say it's close to 7,000 live, yes.
So you do that,
So depending on the source of data, some of them are hourly, some of them are only available to us weekly, from like FAA example, right? Depending on source, we pull in, dissect, deduplicate, right? Because there's some deduplication. Some of it has to be structured, so you run it through a training models and machine learning, right? Because it's unstructured. And then you put it in the system. It's a 24/7 process. We're close to about 192 terabytes of data right now, only on about 7,000 planes and about 28,000 pilots.
That affected that helicopter crash in New York the other day, because it only planes.
I can't speak to what happened there. I've heard somebody who knows that the pilot involved.
It's poor visibility.
But it doesn't, pilot was certified to fly in poor visibility. I think if you're a helicopter pilot, and we have an expert here, my understanding, if they have any kind of critical engine failures, they outer rotate and they have to find somewhere to go. And he just picked an unfortunate spot. There's nothing new about helicopters flying over buildings in New York. There's nothing new about helicopters flying with marginal visibility. And they probably had permission because of also Trump Tower has a temporary flight restriction. So he must have followed all, this is not a loose cannon, right, that went out there and flew. But on a critical failure, at the low altitude, they have seconds to spare, you know, to do speed up and then slow down. And if they don't do it, they're done. And that's what happened here. Fortunately, there was no passengers on board, and it is what it is. No, I think it was only one pilot in the plane. One pilot.
All right, we'll take one
I
more.
just have one question. You also produced that, Johnny Taylor with Global Encryption Technologies. Do you also track that information for helicopters? And what's your view on the drones that come today?
So the question is, can we collect that data on the helicopters and what the situation with drones? We don't collect right now helicopters. Helicopters amount to about 80,000, 120,000 a year of flights. And being a startup where every dollar matters, right? You go after the big fish, right? If you're the guy who can book jets instantly and the app doesn't need the broker and gives you all this good information, we have a chance. Helicopters wouldn't do it. The drones is another interesting topic because I was driving down 249 and the darn thing was flying at me. And I'm a pilot now. Ooh, can you imagine a dozen of those buzzing around town? All right, so pretty soon I'm sure we're going to do something like that for them because as soon as they start falling themselves or with the help of wonderful armed Texas guards
I know.
in their backyards, right, there might be some fun coming that way. Guys, again, thank you so much for having me here. If there are any questions, I'm hanging around here. I have a business card or it's my first name, last name at any social media. All right, thanks.
Well, let's give So now we know all about the blockchain, we know all about cryptocurrencies, all the way from Bitcoin to Ripple to Ethereum. We know about 7,000 transactions per second, all the way to 24,000 transactions per second. We understand everything about private blockchain, public blockchain, and its applications. So, you know, we are all certified experts. Will you certify us all?
Yes.
Okay.
Two CDs, everybody.
In full disclosure, I love Bitcoin. I invest in Bitcoin myself. But anyway, thank you for this great conversation. So we're going to move right into raffle drawing. We're going to have a little bit of fun. So for our first raffle drawing, let's come on up here, Herbie, and tell us what you're raffling off, and then we'll draw a card. Come to the middle. Let's get your
Yeah, okay, perfect. First of all, I gotta say, thank you, Eugene. I always feel smarter after listening to you and wiser. Thank you.
It's a hard thing to do.
You're very kind. So I want to give away two more tickets to our June 21st conference. And as I was sitting over back there next to George, for some reason, I was thinking for some reason, I think I'm also going to give away a membership in Osaka, Houston to someone who is not a current member. But I'm going to do that on the third one. So let's do the first one. should we do her own? Yeah, I have to do my own. She does a much better job of this than I do. So we have for a ticket, Nancy Phillips. For a ticket, good. And I need to get the other gentleman's, he has a lot to get his card. Keep that. And then the other ticket, Brian Borges.
We'll get you your tickets too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for, if this person is not currently an Osaka Houston member, oops, where are we going here? Marcia Jackson. Where is Marcia Jackson? Sure, come on up there. Hi, I'm Harvey. Thank you. So you're not a member, are you? Well, you will be.
Can we get the women?
Sure. Nancy? And the other gentleman, I guess, has left, who wanted to do my tie as a motherboard tie. Now, he doesn't keep that there. What's his name? Matthew? Congratulations. So, that's okay. Okay.
What's he making?
You got a chance.
Dave, you want to
He wants a beer.
I need a beer and a beat on my head.
That's okay, we can photograph you with the beard here. That's okay. Okay.
Yeah, let's just,
All right.
told you
But I want to thank all of you for coming out, because we do want to do this monthly, as Umesh has said, and we're going to endeavor to get some very good speakers, and we'll also do some panels at times, and we'll get some people from SIM involved as well.
Well, let's get them. You're not in charge.
I enjoy it almost a beat, yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Harvey. Okay, so now we have Renee App Builders with their, what are you giving away?
A Best Buy $20 gift card. So hi everybody, I'm Reva Verma. I'm the CEO of Reneka App Builders. Reneka App Builders is a digital marketing firm here in Houston. We develop websites, mobile apps, and social media campaigns. So that's my normal spiel, but today I would like to get a little more personal. I was recently nominated to the American Diabetes Association board here in Houston, and I'm a type 1 diabetic. I have had type 1 diabetes for 16 years, and I live with it every single day. It's a 24/7, 365-day job. So if anybody here follows me on social media, you know that I have kicked off the Kiss a Pig campaign. So why am I kissing a pig? Well, this is my pig, and to be a little silly. So this is my pig nose. So what I am doing is I am raising money in awareness for the price of insulin. If anybody knows, the price of insulin is astronomical. To put it in perspective, a vial of insulin for me is $365 average a vial, and that's with insurance, and I need 3 vials a month. You can do the math. So, insulin was first taken from pigs when it was used as the first treatment for diabetes. So the Kiss a Pig campaign is on August 15th this year, so I am fundraising for that. If you would like more information or would like to get involved, I am happy to talk to you about that. I do the social media and website presence for the American Diabetes Association. My company is very heavily involved with the ADA, so that is my spiel. So with that, I would like to do the raffle drawing. Michael A. Jackson with Supple and Sage. Shannon. He has been running all the video for Reneka App Builder, so if you need a 4K video guy, super expert at everything he does, super professional, talk to him.
Next, we have Michael Becker. Michael Becker is Blue Lance's VP of Channel Sales. What do you have for everybody, Michael?
I have a Amazon $25 gift card. So we'll see who's going to win this in just a minute. Meanwhile, let me just tell you a little bit about what I'm doing. We have a new channel sales program that is recruiting managed service providers in the cybersecurity space to employ our cybersecurity governance software, which scans and assesses and helps remediate and then report on regulatory requirements, regulatory compliance for a variety of regulatory bodies. And so the program is getting kicked off, has been operating now for a couple of months. If any of you happen to know an MSP, a managed service provider, who could benefit by an alliance with us, please see me about that. Meanwhile, let's make our drawing here. Oh, no, I'm not here. No. Kevin Hall. All right, let's Somebody gonna take a picture?
Yes, sorry, got distracted.
Very good. Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Michael. All right, so with that, we're almost at a close. We are at 7:04. We normally try to end by 7:05. I think we have made it. Give everybody a hand. Great time. When's the next meeting? Does anybody remember? Second Thursday of every month, right here, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. See y'all.